Thank you for joining us today. Today we're looking at the issue of Islamophobia. With the increase in the number of attacks related to Islamophobia in the UK and the West generally, what has created Islamophobia? Should Muslims be doing more? I'm joined by a panel of guests, and I want to start off by going to David Furness, who's a member of the British National Party, known also as the BNP. David, have Muslims created Islamophobia?
Well, the first thing to say is I don't agree with this term Islamophobia, because the word phobia means an irrational fear. So I think it's very rational to fear Islam, because people are getting killed in terror attacks, they're getting injured. So it's really the wrong term to use. It's a rational fear that people have of Islam. And if you notice, there's no such... There doesn't seem to be a word such as Hinduophobia or Sikhophobia. So it's really, you should be saying fear of Islam, rational fear of Islam. It's not irrational.
So to come back to the question, who's created it?
Muslims have created this fear by their terrorist attacks, by their aggressive attitude. It's a predatory religion, and it's all or nothing. It's that they brought this on themselves. And what is of concern to British people is a particular strain of Islam called Deobandi, which is taught in almost all the Islamic training centres in this country, and they've got control, apparently, of half the mosques in this country. Now, Deobandi, as you know, is a revivalist movement within Sunni Islam. And it's a very dangerous strain of Islam. It's the Islam that's adhered to by the Taliban, and we don't want it in this country. So yes, they brought it on themselves.
Nadeem Abbas, I want to bring you in. So you're quite active in your community. What's causing Islamophobia? Is it the Muslims? Is it not? Is it external factors? What is it?
To answer your question very simply and succinctly, no. We don't cause any of them. No victim causes these problems. My learned guest from the BNP, David, I respect his opinion thoroughly, but he is phobic, because the answer that he gave is irrational, because he doesn't understand that even in Islam we have nuances. The Deobandi school of thought, the Wahhabi school of thought, the Isnashti, the Salafi, there are many flavors and rainbows within our faith. The fact that he picks up on is the fact that the stuff that he's being fed by the BBC, by the MSN.
Let's come back to the question of
what
is causing Islamophobia.
I'll tell you what it's causing, and it's simple. It was decided in pre the first Gulf War. It's known as the PNAC agreement, which was made in America. This agreement stated that because Russia had fallen, that the American conglomerate of arms, they needed a new threat, so they decided to make us the new threat. They have to persuade the world that we are the new threat in order to turn them against us, so that the arms manufacturers in the American states, as well as here, can be funded.
So
we are small people in the bigger game. The gentleman over there if he understood these simple facts, that we are being used as tools to fight each other, while, shouldn't say this in the mosque, but it has to be said, while the pigs have their snout in the trough.
Well, I'd like to say, of course it's unfair and inaccurate to say that all Muslims are terrorists, of course that. But unfortunately, this silent majority are in fact silent. Where is the peace movement? Where's the Muslim peace movement? Why aren't they marching in their thousands saying no to violence, no to Sharia law? I don't see that. So the silent majority have no relevant influence on Islam as a political ideology. So therefore, in that respect, they are irrelevant.
So from your perspective, what should Muslims be doing?
Well, they should be doing more to combat terrorism in their communities. We're going on peace marches, coming out and saying, we don't want Sharia law, we don't want violence, but they're not doing enough. That's why they're called a silent majority.
So as an active member of the community, I have produced endless statements against atrocities that have taken place abroad. I've actually attended a number of rallies that are calling for peace, that are calling for an end to terror. The difference here is that they are never covered by the press. A small incident can happen that has a Muslim and it's portrayed in a negative manner, and that will get the front page. Whereas you can have 3,000 people gathered in Trafalgar Square calling for peace, and you might see that on a random blog hidden within the Twitter sphere, but it's not going to be in the Metro, the Evening Standard, the Times, the Daily Mails. And so there is a real double standard when it comes to coverage of such events.
Basically, we're the vocal majority who are being kept silent. It's the other way around. We are not the silent majority that aren't vocal. We are a vocal majority that kept silent. It's the silent minority that are these terrorists, so-called terrorists. And to be honest with you, we don't have time for them. The gentleman said, you've just said that you're Islamophobic and it's a real thing, it's not irrational. In that term, even I'm Islamophobic, because I'm fearful of certain Islamic faiths within the Islamic fold. I'm afraid of the Deobandis, the Salafis and the Wahhabis, because they will go around killing us as well.
Right, I want to hold on there. I want to bring in Ali Rahim on this point. What are your thoughts? What else could Muslims be doing to tackle Islamophobia? Are we not doing enough to portray a positive image of Islam? Are we not doing enough to denounce the terrorist attacks? Should we even be denouncing these terrorist attacks?
Giving a positive image of Islam is a bit more than denouncing the terrorist attacks. That's a bit more. That's the next stage. As far as denouncing the terrorist attacks is concerned, well, you only have to go on YouTube and just search for all the famous Muslim speakers on earth, and they will all denounce terrorism. All of them will. Muslims can't do a lot about the way the media portrays them. They can't also do things such as, for example, Anjem Choudhury walking the streets freely and spewing hatred. There's not a lot we can do because we are afraid of them as well. We're afraid of these groups. We can't do something about stopping the Saudi government using their oil money to fund the Wahhabi religion. We can't do that. We can't stop that. And the only people who can really do that are the powers.
But do you not accept? But do you accept that extremism is growing within the UK mosques, and our lecturers are playing a part in that?
Well, in fact, it could be that we're having a polarization where maybe there are small, really few number who are influenced by these extremist people. However, because of their actions, because of the actions of some of the extreme individuals, Muslims are in fact becoming disillusioned with some of the teachings of Islam. Sheikh Hamza Yusuf said that for the first time in his career, he's an American scholar of Islam, he says parents are contacting him and saying that my children are leaving Islam or are doubting Islam because of what's happening in the world. So it's not a case of people becoming more extreme. Even Muslims dislike what's happening and are becoming disillusioned.
Assalamu alaikum, and thank you for joining us after the break. We've been having a great discussion on Islamophobia and are Muslims to blame. We're going to take a question from the audience, so we'll start there.
You have people like Donald Trump in the world now who can openly say, let's, put an out-and-out ban on anyone who is identified as Muslim going into the United States. And he, maybe there was some backlash over that. I didn't hear anything. I just think there's such a stark double standard, against the general Muslim populace. I consider myself a liberal, hard-working member of society, and yes, I happen to be a Muslim, but even for myself, it's just so plain that there is a demagoguery of the community that I belong to, and there's at every level a double standard which plays into the hands of extremism. It plays into the hands of the far right. What comment do the panel have on this?
Great, thank you for that question. Yeah. David, what are your thoughts on this? And then Ali, I'll come to you.
Well, the Donald Trump ban on Muslims, that's a temporary ban, he says, until he can figure out what's going on. Because his feeling is that he can't take a chance, they don't know what's going on. It's a fear of terrorism. Now, even though the majority of Muslims appear to be non-violent, there are some It's a sizable minority, but there are some. I mean, can you take the chance? So he just wants to protect. It's a temporary ban. Just as in the last World War, they banned Germans coming to this country, Italians, Japanese. It's a temporary ban, and that's what we want in this country. Not we want a ban on all immigration until we can sort out what's going on.
It's very important. Donald Trump has the right to say what he wanted to say. It's his country. If he feels Muslims are threatening it, if he feels Mexicans are threatening it, if he feels aliens are threatening it, he has the right to say, I don't want them in that country. The same way we in the United Kingdom are allowed to say, we don't want certain people in our country who are threatening it. That is our right. The same way in Pakistan, in India, in Iran, they are allowed to say, we don't want these people in our country, in a temporary measure, which is accepted, because we are defending our borders.
Right, okay, Isma, I'm going to bring you in here. So
Sure, I think we'd actually be quite remiss to say that Muslims do not perpetuate anti-Semitism. In fact, I've heard shocking incidents myself firsthand where people do make, the most horrific comments about kind of our Jewish brothers and sisters.
You having said that, I don't mind Salafis being banned from coming into this country. I'm afraid of them.
Okay,
I don't want them here. I don't want Saudi Arabian Wahhabis here. Ban them. The UK government should do more to ban them.
I'm just looking at the data here. The Muslims are overrepresented in the prison system, and in England, Wales, it's 5% of the country, and yet they're 15% of the population. In Spain, 2.3% of the country are Muslim, and yet they're 70% prisoners. Now, that's
they're underrepresented in other areas, for example, media.
Let me deal with this. That's because they refuse to assimilate into their host country. They want to follow Sharia law and not the law of the land.
I'm not sure if all our panelists will agree on that. I think the key thing that's coming out from David's point is around Sharia law. So is Sharia law against British values? Ali Rahim, what are your thoughts on that?
That's a tough question to answer. If I say, yes, it is against British values, then what? There are different interpretations of Sharia law. There's not just one Sharia law, and this is an important point. If the BNP are scared of the Sharia law that we see in some of these countries, then I too am afraid of that Sharia law. My interpretation of Sharia law is completely different. Sharia law just means law. There are different interpretations of the Islamic law. Are they against British values? Well, consider this fact. There's a fear that people have of change. And I see that some individuals may have this fear throughout the world, where they fear that their culture is changing. You can say that well, as David said, that Nadeem is British by the law, but not in terms of the ethnicity. Things change. Someone from 500 years ago could come here, sit next to David and say to David, you're not British because you're so different from me. Things change.
David, do you have any comments on that before I take another question from the audience?
About Sharia law?
Yeah.
Well, yes, there are aspects of Sharia law like beheadings, honor killings. There was a woman in the next street to me.
No scholar on earth who says honor killings is part of Sharia law. There's not a single scholar, not even one
Well, it happens in several countries.
Saudi Arabia and places
apostasy,
like that. Okay,
apostasy is punishable by death.
That's not true. There's a big argument.
Hold on. Please only talk when I've asked.
So there are aspects of
Sharia law.
People should obey the law of Britain.
David, just make your point clearly, and then we'll move on to the next one. What was your final?
My final thing.
Summarize it in one sentence.
People should obey British law, not Sharia law.
Great, thank you. It's been a really interesting debate, and we could actually go on for quite a long time. This sort of brings us to the end of the show, so we'll end it here. Leaves us with more questions than answers. How much more needs to be done from the Muslim perspective? How much more does the general British public need to be doing? Do we need to be doing more to educate society, and are Muslims the real victims? We'll leave it there, but thank you for joining us, and inshallah we'll see you soon.
To donate to the British National Party, please call 0844 809 4581 or go to www.bnp.org.uk/donations/general.